The champagne flute slipped from my hand and shattered on the marble floor, but nobody noticed. They were too busy laughing at what my daughter-in-law had just said. "Oh, that's just Margaret. We don't usually include her in the family photos. She's more background." My son chuckled. The photographer hesitated, unsure if this was a joke. It wasn't. I smiled. The kind of smile you force when you're swallowing every ounce of pride left in your bones. She waved me off with perfectly manicured fingers. "Can someone move her out of the shot?" The lights reflecting off her dress. That dress? It cost more than their wedding cake. They had no idea who I really was. And they certainly didn't expect that by the time dessert was served, the woman they dismissed would own the very venue they were standing in. But let me backtrack. Before I begin, make sure to subscribe and tell me where you're watching from. Your voice matters, just like mine does now, even if it didn't back then. My name is Margaret. I'm 68 years old, and for most of my life, I was the kind of woman people didn't see unless they needed something. Not invisible exactly, just background. The person who refilled the coffee pot without being asked, who took the photo, never stood in it, who gave without expecting much in return. That was fine by me, until it wasn't. I raised my son, Daniel, alone after his father passed. I worked 2 jobs, packed lunches, ironed uniforms, and skipped meals to keep the lights on. I never remarried, not because I didn't have offers, though they were few, but because I thought Daniel needed stability, not more change. I believed if I gave him everything I had, he'd grow up to be kind. But kindness can't be inherited, and love doesn't always turn into loyalty. When Daniel met Olivia, I tried. I really did. She was smart, beautiful, polished in a way I never was. She worked in PR, knew how to smile just the right amount, laugh at the right pitch, compliment someone with words that sounded sweet but had a bitter edge. From the beginning, she kept me at a polite distance. "Margaret, we'll handle this," she'd say when it came to wedding planning. Or, "Oh no, don't trouble yourself. We've got a stylist coming." She'd call me Daniel's mom, like I didn't have a name of my own. But I smiled. I showed up. I bought a modest gold dress for the wedding. Nothing flashy. Nothing to steal attention. Just soft, warm tones I thought would blend in, like I always did. The morning of the wedding, I knocked on her dressing room door with a small gift, an embroidered handkerchief. It had been my mother's. Something old, something meaningful. Olivia looked at it like I'd handed her a paper napkin. "Oh, thanks," she said, tucking it in a drawer. "We probably won't need that." That was the first crack. The second came during the family photos. The photographer gestured for me to join them in front of the fountain. Olivia whispered something to Daniel, who hesitated. Then she turned to me, all smiles. "Actually, Margaret, would you mind standing off to the side? We're just doing immediate family right now." I was stunned. Daniel didn't say a word, just looked at his shoes like they'd tell him what to do. I stepped back. That's when she made the joke. "We don't usually include her in the photos. She's more background." Laughter, a few chuckles. Even Daniel smiled. And the photographer? He just kept clicking. But I didn't say anything, didn't cry, didn't make a scene. Instead, I walked quietly back into the venue and stood near the back, where the catering staff were prepping dessert. One of the waiters gave me a sympathetic look. I nodded. I'd stood in kitchens like that most of my life. That's when I made the decision, not out of anger, not out of spite, but because I finally understood something I'd spent too many decades ignoring. When people show you who they are, believe them. I had no plans to stay for the reception, but I did. Only long enough to see the name of the venue printed on the menu cards. It was a high-end place, newly opened, still trying to make a name in the wedding scene. I remembered reading about it in the paper a few months ago. The owners were struggling. A developer had backed out last minute. The land under the venue had just gone up for sale. I felt something stir in me I hadn't felt in years. Not revenge, power. Because what Olivia didn't know, and what Daniel had never cared to ask, was that I had money. Quiet money. Years ago, after paying off the house and retiring from the school district, I started investing small amounts into real estate. Nothing fancy, just fixer-uppers, rentals. Then the market shifted. Prices rose. I sold at the right time. Bought again. Let them sit. I listened. I learned. While they were planning color palettes and signature cocktails, I was buying buildings under a trust name they wouldn't recognize if they tried. The day after the wedding, I called my broker and made an offer. By the end of the month, the deal was done. I now owned the land under the venue where my daughter-in-law laughed me out of her wedding photos, and that was just the beginning. Owning the land was one thing, but what I did next? That was the quietest storm they never saw coming. I didn't make a scene. I didn't contact Daniel or Olivia. I didn't send a single email. Instead, I met with the venue's owners, James and Carla, a lovely couple in their early 40s. They were drowning in bills, struggling to stay afloat after a developer backed out last minute. Their wedding season was the only thing keeping the place alive. "I'm not here to tear anything down," I told them. Quite the opposite. They were relieved. The contract gave me full ownership of the land, but I let them continue operations, on one condition. From that point forward, all venue activities would be filtered through my management trust. That meant every wedding, every event, every catering deal, 10% of profits flowed directly to my holding company. James called it generous. Carla called it salvation. I called it positioning. The following month, I started showing up to the venue, not as a guest this time, but as a quiet figure who walked the halls with a clipboard. Olivia's voice still rang in my ears. We don't usually include her in the photos. And yet here I was, on every contract, in every deal, listed as M. Hawthorne Holdings. They never even knew, until the baby shower. That was Olivia's next big social event. Loud, lavish, photographers, bloggers, influencers, gold-accented balloons and floral walls that smelled like credit card debt. I didn't attend, of course. I wasn't invited. But I watched from the balcony office on the second floor, glass windows, full view of the garden where the guests mingled. I saw Olivia pose for photos with her mother, saw Daniel standing off to the side, phone in hand, barely smiling. He looked tired, older than his age. That surprised me. I could tell something was off. His suit was wrinkled, his eyes dull. The sparkle he once had was gone, like someone slowly draining their own light for the sake of appearances. Still, I didn't approach. I waited. It was 3 days later that the venue manager emailed me, a bounced check. Olivia and Daniel had paid for half the event in advance, but the final balance didn't go through. Policy required immediate full payment. But the manager asked if we should allow an extension, since they were family. I replied with 2 words: bill them. By the end of the week, Carla sent the invoice, late fee included. Another week passed. No response. Then the phone rang. It was Daniel. I didn't answer. Next day, a voicemail. "Hey, Mom. I know we haven't talked much, but I think there's been some confusion with the baby shower bill. Can we talk?" I listened to it twice, not because I needed to, but because I had waited years for him to speak to me like I mattered. I called back the next day. He sounded cautious, careful. "Thanks for calling back," he said. "Of course," I replied. "I heard there was a payment issue." "Yeah." Olivia thought the venue was all handled. She didn't realize the balance was due. "Could you maybe speak to someone there and ask them to hold off?" I let the silence stretch. Then I said, "Daniel, I am the someone." Silence. "I'm sorry?" he asked. "I own the land under the venue. I control the trust. The manager works for me. So yes, I could speak to someone, but I won't." He didn't speak for a full 10 seconds. "Wait, you own it? Since when?" "Since the day after your wedding." There was a sound on the other end. A soft exhale. Not quite disbelief. More like the sound of someone recounting every arrogant decision they ever made. I didn't know." "I know you didn't." We spoke for a few more minutes, mostly about logistics. He promised to handle the bill. I said I hoped he would. And then, just as we were about to hang up, he said, "Why didn't you tell us?" I paused. Would it have mattered? He didn't answer. Click. I thought that would be the end of it. But the next week, Olivia showed up at my apartment. Yes, The same Olivia who once said my clothes reflected too much light. The same Olivia who had me cropped out of wedding photos. She stood at my door, designer handbag tucked under her arm, fake smile perfectly in place. "Margaret," she began, voice syrupy. "I think there's been a misunderstanding." I didn't invite her in. I let her talk from the doorway. She tried everything: politeness, charm, guilt. "We're family after all," she said. "Surely you can make an exception." I folded my arms. "Family includes people in photos," I said. "Family doesn't erase each other." Her face tightened. "This is just business, Olivia. I don't run things based on pity. I learned that from watching you." Her jaw clenched. I saw the anger flicker behind her mascara. I closed the door softly. That night, I made tea and sat on my balcony as the city lights blinked below me. I wasn't bitter, just clear. For the first time in my life, I wasn't background. I was the frame. If you think she did the right thing, comment below. We stand with her. I'd love to hear what you think, and don't forget to subscribe. Your voice matters here. The story didn't end with Olivia walking away from my doorstep, not even close. 2 weeks after that uncomfortable visit, I got a call from the venue's property manager. He said Daniel had come by alone. Quiet, no demands, no threats, just questions. "I think he's trying to understand what happened," the manager said. "He asked about the trust. Your name." He looked sad. I wasn't sure what to do with that. You spend your whole life waiting for someone to see you, and when they finally do, part of you wonders if it's too late to care. A few days later, I received a letter, handwritten, from Daniel. He said he'd been doing a lot of thinking, that he didn't realize how far he'd drifted from the boy who used to hold my hand in the grocery store, the one who'd beg me for cookies and promise to be a good helper. He wrote, "I let Olivia dictate our dynamic. I let money and pride stand between me and the woman who raised me from nothing. I don't expect forgiveness, but I owe you the truth." It wasn't a perfect letter, but it was honest. And so I responded with honesty too. I invited him to meet me at the venue, not for a conversation, but for something else entirely. The staff was confused when I asked them to set up a long table in the garden, just like the one at his wedding. Same white linens, same candles, only this time, there were no guests, just me and Daniel. He showed up wearing a button-down and old shoes. No Olivia, no baby, just him. We sat across from each other while the sun dipped behind the trees. He looked around. "You remembered," he said softly. "I never forget anything, Daniel. I just keep it quiet." He nodded. "I know that now." For a long time we didn't speak, just watched the wind carry petals across the stone. Then he said it. "I wish you'd said something sooner, about who you are, what you've built." I looked him in the eye. "And I wish you'd asked." That's when he cried. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just the quiet grief of a man who realized too late that his foundation had always been softer than he thought. I reached across the table and took his hand. "I'm not angry," I said. "I'm just done making myself small so others can feel important." He nodded. "I understand." Then he asked the question I didn't expect. "What do you want me to do now?" I smiled. Not with smugness, but with peace. "Be better. For your daughter. Show her how to treat the women who build her world." He promised he would, and for the first time in a long time, I believed him. The months that followed were strange, but healing. Daniel came by more often, sometimes with his daughter, sometimes alone. Olivia remained distant, which was fine by me. Some bridges aren't meant to be rebuilt. Some ruins are better left untouched. I didn't demand apologies from her. I didn't need groveling or theatrics. My revenge had already happened. Not through spite, but through success, through self-respect, through silence that spoke louder than any scream ever could. 1 year later, I made a decision. I sold the venue land at a massive profit and donated half the earnings to a women's shelter downtown. A place for women like me, who spent their lives invisible until they realized they didn't have to be. With the rest, I bought a small cottage by the lake. Nothing fancy, just peace, birds, a swing chair, a vegetable patch, and books, so many books. Sometimes I still get emails from the venue staff. They say the business is doing better than ever. New owners, better energy. I'm happy for them. Daniel visits twice a month now. We don't talk about the wedding, or Olivia, or the years lost. We just sit, drink tea, watch the water move. My granddaughter is walking now. She calls me Nana M. I like that. And when she asks me someday why there are no pictures of me at her parents' wedding, I'll tell her the truth. Because I wasn't meant to be in the background that day. I was meant to be the foundation, the frame, the flame they didn't see coming. And you know what? I wouldn't change a thing. If you believe she earned her peace, drop a comment. She became the storm. Let her know she's not alone. And if you haven't already, subscribe. Your voice matters here. Always has. Always will.